Thank you for tuning into Ray-ality TV. I'm Ray Bakari. Joining me today is State Representative-elect Earl Read III. Earl was elected to Rhode Island House District 26 in this past election earlier this month. The district represents parts of West Warwick, Coventry, and Warwick. Earl, it's great to have you on.
Thank you very much, Raymond, and it's nice to be on. Thank you for having me.
You ended up winning by double digits in an open race for this seat and will represent that district come January in the new legislative session. Has it sunk in yet?
It's starting to sink in. I've had meetings, I've met with leadership, I've spoken about, some of my agenda items and some things that I want to accomplish this year. And I've met with a lot of people at the House, and I've been working at this for the last year. So it's really starting to sink in, and I really look forward to this opportunity.
And for those who are just now hearing about you, can you explain to them what first motivated you to run and a little bit about your backstory?
Excuse me. So I've wanted to run for a very long time. My wife and I have been married for 25 years and we have three children. I wanted to wait until they were grown and set on their ways, and they all are. So this would be a perfect opportunity for me to run. A little bit about myself. I worked for the Warwick Police Department for almost 23 years, retiring as the detective lieutenant. I did all kinds of work, including patrol, supervisor work, community police, traffic, and I ended up as the detective lieutenant and retired in 2018 to become a full-time teacher at Coventry High School within the Regional Career and Technical Center, where I teach the criminal justice pathway, which is a career and tech program for our students right in the technical center built into the high school. And I've been there for the last 8 years. I absolutely love it. And I intend to continue teaching and becoming a legislator for the state of Rhode Island in District 26.
And your race was one of the only ones out of all the state house races earlier this month that was a flip from a Republican representative to now a Democrat going to represent the seat. This was an open race for those watching after State Rep Patricia Morgan opted out of seeking re-election to instead run for the U.S. Senate race. And this was a flip in an election cycle where Republicans did quite well locally, better than some may have expected. Trump cracked almost 42%, which last time that happened was in the late 80s. The Rhode Island GOP picked up House 42 and 21 and held on to 15. What do you think led to your race's result differing from what we've seen throughout the state?
So I have to give myself some credit on the hard work that I've done over the last year. I've met over 7,000 people. I walked the entire district. I announced my candidacy in November of 2023. I met a lot of people, and like I told people I was campaigning and knocking on doors, that I have a unique relationship to all three pieces of the district, which I don't think my two opponents had. I say this because I worked in the city of Warwick for 23 years, so Warwick is very special to me. I've lived in the town of Coventry for 25 years and raised my family, so that piece of the district is very important to me. And also the town of West Warwick, which is the largest piece of District 26, where Representative Morgan has traditionally been strong. My entire in-law family, my wife's family, is from entirely within the district. So I got out and I met people. I realized that District 26 turned a little red over this last election. However, I have to say, I think it's because I got out, I met people. I mean, I had people telling me that I was the only Democrat that they were going to vote for in a Republican election. So I told people that I sit as a moderate Democrat in the middle. I believe in, my basic fundamental values, and I really look forward to working for District 26. Representative Morgan has been a representative for a very long time. Some of the things that I look forward to doing is bringing back legislative grant funding to our districts, which we really haven't seen in the past few years. Money is tough for everyone. So I want to take advantage of bringing back money to a district that I'm really trying to represent. And I think that people really bought on to my plan, and I really look forward to helping them. I've helped people already before I even won the election. I helped people in West Warwick with flooding. I helped some veterans with benefits. And I worked with FEMA to get some people because of the Kent County, the Patuxent River flooding down in the Natick section. And I worked with people doing that. And I've liked to help people my whole life. Public service has been in my life as a police officer and now as an educator. And I really look forward to this. And I'm glad the people giving me this opportunity.
Kind of piggybacking off a part of the answer where you mentioned your approach to canvassing the neighborhood. That's for those watching, that's a big part of these local state legislative races where you won't see a TV ad, but a lot of the candidates say knock on doors or sometimes they'll send out mailers. What were among the, say, top three issues you were hearing from folks at the doors during this cycle?
So one of the first issues was money, right? Everyone's hurting for money, the price, the economy, taxes. Although taxes can sometimes become a local issue, right, with towns and cities. So money, and also, believe it or not, a lot of medical things had come up during the knocking on doors. A lot of mental health, a lot of subscriber services like benefits that are available to people and affordable health care and things like that. So things that I really like to take advantage of. For instance, just last week, Speaker Sakachi had invited me to a roundtable at Kent Hospital where we met with Dr. Wagner and we spoke about all the availabilities and opportunities within the Care New England system. And it was a great roundtable experience for me as an incoming representative to see these services. And as a result of that meeting, I've already turned someone on to one of the services that we spoke about.
I do have a political question before we take on some of the issues that are facing the state that you'll end up voting on or addressing as a legislator come next session. So there was an endorsement later on in the home stretch of this race. Helena Foulkes, she ran for governor the last time in the Democratic primary, was the runner-up. She's likely going to run again this time, raising big money to do so. She endorsed actually your opponent, well, one of your two opponents, because it was a Republican and independent. She endorsed independent Vincent Marzullo. You and Helena are both Democrats. What was your reaction when you heard the news about that endorsement?
So everyone can do what they want. I was actually surprised when the endorsement came out. I did speak with Helena since my election. She did call to congratulate me, and she had apologized for her endorsement. I had simply said that I wish I had had the opportunity to have a conversation with her because I found it a little unusual for her to cross a party line and endorse a party line without even speaking to a candidate. But I understand people's personal lifelong friendships sometimes get in the way. So I completely understand. But I did have a conversation with her, and I had mentioned to her that I wish I had been at least afforded the opportunity to speak with her before she made her decision, or maybe she didn't complete an endorsement for the race.
So you hadn't spoken to her before that endorsement at all?
I had not, no.
Got it. Moving on to now some of the issues that you'd be focusing on as a legislator. You are an educator, so I want to talk about education a bit. There's a lot of ways this issue could be tackled, and everybody has their own educational reform of choice. Going in there as a sitting teacher, where should lawmakers pay attention to first when it comes to reforms?
So, one of the biggest components of my education platform is mental health of students. We are suffering a tremendous outcry for mental health from our students. It comes from education, it comes from medical services, it comes from lack of support. We have an abundance of counselors and therapists ready to assist these students. However, one of the biggest problems is the stigma of getting help. These students are afraid. I see it in my classroom. They don't want to be made fun of. They don't want to be teased to get help. So I'm constantly striving to get these students to get this help. So mental health of students is something that I think lawmakers really need to pay attention to, especially coming off of COVID, where we still isolated and we socially withdrew people from the area because we had to, and we're still feeling those effects. One of the second things about education that really bothers me and is the whole bullying situation of teenagers today. I work in a high school where some people don't understand the ramifications of bullying. This teasing gets a little bit out of control and it becomes harmful to some students. So I'm a member of the Coventry Juvenile Hearing Board. I've been for the last 8 years. And almost every single assault case that comes is a result of some type of bullying that's festered into an assault because the student just couldn't handle it or had had enough.
Speaking of that part of the answer you mentioned, talking about the mental health of students, legislatively, do you see that as something that could be fixed with more funding for more counselors or maybe public awareness?
So I do. I see many things, and I know last session did work on a lot of bullying legislation and policies and procedures and things like that. So I think that not only do we just have to dump money towards mental health counseling and things like that, but we have to make sure we're doing it the correct way. And we have to make sure that the students are willing to take advantage of it. Because if we're putting money in places where they're not taking advantage of it, essentially, we're just wasting that money. So, being that it's a big problem, I think we have to look at what the students need and how we can fix it. And of course, you had mentioned public awareness. Public awareness is very big. It's very big. We have to get away from saying, and we have to learn to say it's okay to get help. We want people to get help instead of being backed into a corner and they feel they have not, no one or anything to rely on. One of the last things about education that I really want to focus my attention on, and I put it in all of my mailers, is pretty specific towards me because I'm a career and tech educator, right? I'm not a regular core academic teacher. I teach in the Career and Tech Center. And I'm one that, although I have a master's degree and a bachelor's degree, I don't believe college is for everyone. And I think we really have to increase our career and tech education awareness, not only on a local level, but on a state level. There are many different facilities throughout this state where students are learning trades, getting licensed, getting apprentices, internships, externships, getting paid. We have seniors at Coventry High School that are getting paid their entire their senior year by electric boat, performing welding, going into a job. We have seniors that are working at police departments, getting hired onto police departments. So I really want to put a big push to career and tech education and not just simply making all these kids think they need to go to a 2 or 4 year college because we need people to work.
That's definitely up there with one of the educational reforms I hear from folks either running for office or are currently in office, and across party lines too. One other one I do want to talk about as well that we hear typically every session, at least in the last couple of years when talking about education, is the push to have something that they do in Massachusetts, which is the constitutional amendment for the guaranteeing a right to an adequate education. I'm curious, as a teacher, how do you feel about having something like that here in Rhode Island?
So I'm not overly familiar with that amendment. I have heard about it. So I will say that every student has a right to an education. The problem is it's all how much they put into it, right? So students get what they give. They get what they put into it. So we have charter schools, we have school select, we have all these different types of programs that are out there. But I think we're getting away from the basics of education. And I think we're adding so many add-ons or additions that I think we're getting away from the core academics of a student just being a student, learning how to take notes, learning how to test themselves, learning how to apply the skills they're learning in the classroom. And I think that's where we're failing. And I hope that I can have a positive effect and maybe possibly get on an education committee or something. I have a list that the speaker has given us lists of our committee recommendations and what we would like to do. And of course, I want to stay where my background fits me. So I would love to be on the education committee. Of course, I think I would like to be on the judiciary committee because of my public safety. And also, one thing that I'm very proud of is the liaisonship I have with my local cities and towns. I can say that of all three cities and towns, Warwick, West Warwick, and Coventry, I have an excellent relationship with all the town councils and all the city council. So I was also looking at municipal and local government committee to possibly uh, take part in that committee. So these are the three things that I'm really looking forward to my first session. But I don't want to sound like I have an agenda or a game plan already because I want people to remember that although I will give them 110%, I am a new legislator and I know I have a lot to learn, but I want to be as effective as I can. And that's what I've been telling people for the last year. I want people to listen to me. So I want to speak about things that I know. And if I don't, I do my research and I seek out people that know and I look for the experts for advice. But I
So
have,
as of right now, you want to hear more about that issue before a for or against.
yes, that's
Got it.
correct.
How do you feel about school choice? I'm assuming you've heard that one where the push, mainly by typically Republicans, is to have the tax dollars follow the child wherever school they go, typically done through a voucher program.
So school choice is tough, right? Because we have taxpayers that are funding schools, and then we're paying an additional funding to send that student to another school because he or she decides to go to another school. So, in my basic opinion, before I get into the House and before I start listening to policy, I would say that if you're receiving an adequate education in your city or town, why should the taxpayers of that city or town be burdened with sending you somewhere else just because you want to go somewhere else? Now, career and tech is a different animal, right? Some cities and towns don't have criminal justice. So I personally have students from other cities and towns. So I have students from West Warwick. I have students from Warwick. Well, they don't have a criminal justice program. So that's something different. So if you have a student that's looking for something that's not offered by their hometown, I would be inclined to support that student to go seek that education. Therefore, the city and town would be on the hook for that money.
So it depends on the type of parameters that are set up, is what I'm hearing.
Exactly. I wouldn't want to give a blanket, yes, you can, or no, you can't. It's all situation specific, right?
Got it. Shifting from education now, I want to talk about another big issue that lawmakers are probably going to be pulling their hairs about. The Washington Bridge's westbound portion being closed down. Next month will be 1 year since everybody got that infamous notice that that part of the bridge was closed. In terms of just how the handling of this has been, in terms of transparency, how do you feel it's been handled so far?
So the Washington Bridge is a tough project, right? It's a terrible, terrible incident that's come into play in effect. From what I see, I'm not affected by the East Bay as much, but that doesn't mean it's not important because, of course, I go to the East Bay. Of course, I've been on 195, and of course, I've been in the traffic for the bridge. The only thing that I will say is if we're finding that people were inept in their functions and jobs, there needs to be accountability and responsibility. Now, if that has been proven, it needs to be dealt with. I haven't been personally following it because I'm going to be honest with you, Raymond. I've been extremely busy with my own campaign in Kent County, and I haven't really followed the Washington Bridge. However, I believe if people are being paid a job to inspect and supervise, and they're not inspecting and supervising, they need to be held accountable for their deficiencies.
Speaking of inspecting, some lawmakers have used this situation as a push for creating an inspector general's office, which would be, just for those watching, is an independent office that wouldn't answer to the legislature, but they would look for waste, fraud, and inefficiencies in government and then report it. Do you think we need an inspector general's office after all of this?
So the idea of an inspector general, although it sounds nice and accountable, there is no accountability with an inspector general's office. So the problem is they're coming in and they're inspecting and they're judging and they're making these decisions. However, none of these decisions are anyone is held accountable to the decisions because the people that are making them have no authority, right? So that's the biggest problem. So in my opinion, you hold people accountable for what they've said they're going to do, right? I've told almost 14,000 people that I am going to represent District 26 as well as I can. I haven't made promises. I haven't made agreements. I have said I will be there and I will be seeking input from my constituents, right? So if people are paid to do a job and they're not doing it, they can be held accountable. Now, in a year and a half from now, when Representative Earl Read makes a decision whether he's running for re-election or not, the voters have a chance, right? If I didn't do what I said I was going to do, then I have no problem with people saying, I'm sorry, Earl, I'm not voting for you. You said you were going to do this, this, and this is what you did. This is what you didn't do, right? So accountability, we have the luxury of voting people in and voting people out.
There is one person who's getting heat for this whole situation that you really can't vote in, vote out, and that's the current RIDE director, Peter Alviti. Some folks are adamant that once the dust is settled, he should not be in that position. Where do you stand on that debate?
I don't even have a fair bit of knowledge on the whole situation, so I would rather not make comment.
Understood. Shifting away from the Washington Bridge, this is one I like to ask every lawmaker. How do you feel about the idea of term limits for General Assembly members?
So I am not in favor of term limits for General Assembly for one reason. If I'm not doing a good job, don't vote for me, right? If I ran a business and I had a manager running my store and he's doing a great job, but because he's been there 4 years, 8 years, 10 years, I wouldn't just fire him. I wouldn't just get rid of him and say, I'm sorry, you've been here too long. It's time to bring someone new in. I'd say, thank you very much. You're doing a great job. Our business is booming. It's running smoothly. We have no problems. Continue what you're doing, and how can we grow? Right? So I am not in favor of term limits because if you have someone that's doing good, you keep them. If you have someone that's not doing good, you get rid of them and get someone else.
I have two non-political questions to end things off. I always like to end away from the political issues that are facing our state. Do you have any hobbies?
I do have hobbies. I love to do yard work. I live on almost acre and a half of land, and I'm always outside doing yard work. And I also like to read. And I love sports. And any team I root for is definitely a New England team.
How do you feel about the Patriots season right now? It's been a bit of a stinker.
Well, we just had a discussion today at lunch at work over the Patriots, and it has been a very tough season. We'll see where it goes, and I think we'll probably be getting a good draft pick again.
Yeah, it seems to be the general sentiment among New Englanders right now who are following the Patriots time record this year so far. It's definitely at least a good, possibly a good year for the Celtics. They're looking good, so at least
Yes.
there's that upside. Maybe when the Super Bowl's over, just focus on basketball. That's what I've been telling myself. And my final one, this is the one I really like to ask everybody to keep the tradition going. In your opinion, what do you think Rhode Island is best known for?
Wow, that's a great question, Raymond. I think Rhode Island is best known for a small town community. Smallest state in the union, everybody knows everybody, and there's a connection with everyone in Rhode Island. And I just really saw that while I campaigned over the last year. Whether they knew me, they know my one of my children, they knew my wife, they knew my aunt, they knew my parents, right? Rhode Island has the benefit of being that small knit community. It can help us sometimes and it can hurt us sometimes, right? But I think that's great. And I think it's something to be very proud of because I think having a sense of community is probably one of the best things I can bring forward as a representative.
I agree right there with Rhode Island being a very tight-knit community. Everybody absolutely knows each other. And I've heard that answer too from a couple of
I
other
almost said
candidates.
calamari. I almost said calamari.
Yeah, that's also up there too. I have heard that anecdote though, where people will be on the campaign trail and they'll say, "Wait, we got the same last name. Are we related?" And then it's like like an uncle or
Sure,
like a cousin of a nephew or something, just like some
sure.
distant relation. But yeah, it's I think it's 3 degrees of separation is what they typically say for Rhode Island. That's all the questions I had, Earl. I want to thank you so much for giving me your time for this. I really appreciate it.
Raymond, thank you very much, and it was nice speaking with you.
Likewise, and thank you for tuning into this episode of Ray-ality TV. For future episodes on this channel, when they're posted, please click the subscribe button down below and the post notification bell icon to the right of it. I'm Ray Bakari, and I'll see you next time.